Guys, Thaqib's not here, so I think I said you should host.
No, I'm not hosting. He's hosting.
Listen, I've never hosted in my life.
That's
and I
fine.
don't
I've
host
hosted.
today.
Abdul Sami's hosted, and I
We're
was
both
hosting.
we're both co-hosts. So
You're both exactly co-hosts.
You've got the bigger beard.
I'm
so it's
guest
fine.
host.
You're not guest host. You're main host now.
okay, should we start?
Yeah.
We
Have you
have
not been
started,
yet?
bro. We started.
Yeah, we started.
Have you not been though?
Pure gold. Eau natural.
This is
Natural-
how you should do a
natural
podcast.
recordings.
Okay, let's start again then.
Okay,
Right, who's hosting seriously?
you're hosting.
Nah, don't be like that.
No,
man.
come on.
Fine, I'll host.
Go on,
No one asked you.
Bismillah.
We're not even looking
This is-
towards you. We're looking
this
towards
is-
Kare, and you go,
This
okay,
is-
fine.
This
I'll be
is
the
Asad
host.
all the way here, yeah.
This is me trying to
I mean,
claim
there's
the
been 11
initiative.
episodes, and Asad's only hosted one.
Yeah, that's my place, innit?
That's not your place.
That's my place. The elders host. Go on.
The
I
elders-
mentioned the elder. Oh, he's mentioned the elder argument. So
Yeah, the elders, isn't it? He's got grey hairs. You got.
Calm down.
this is recorded, but this is not getting published.
It's just getting published. All right,
Okay.
go on.
Okay, let's start then. Yeah, should I do it?
Just go for it. Go on. Let's go.
Take care.
You know how to host, don't you?
Okay. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Welcome viewers to another episode of the Midwest podcast. We are
The
here.
Midwest.
The Midwest. Oh, sorry, the Middle West.
Can't believe you forgot the podcast name. Wow.
New name,
Listen.
new host, new name. innit?
New host, new name. Yeah.
Oh yes, I am your host Abdul Sami'. Again, like I said last week, promoted to the main host now.
Yes.
And with
Yes.
me are my co-hosts. I'm waiting for you to introduce
You
yourself.
forgot
His
my
point-
name.
His point.
No, I'm waiting for you to.
Asad
unlike,
Hussein.
can I just say, unlike Thaqib, who's very controlling and very kind of authoritative, I am more empowering. So
That's
I'm trying
fine,
to
that's
make
fine.
you say your name.
Asad Hussein.
MashaAllah. You know Asad Hussein?
Asad Ali Hussein.
Okay.
So,
I knew it was Asad. I didn't know it was Hussein, you know.
are you a
Asad-
sushi Muslim?
Sorry?
Are you a sushi Muslim?
I'm not, no.
He says sushi.
I'm a Muslim, brother.
Allah Akbar.
And who are you?
And we have our guest host.
Jahangir.
Second name, please.
No second names allowed.
Account details, please.
And we are actually enjoying this podcast.
Yeah, we're enjoying it quite a
Because,
bit since Thaqib's not here.
Yeah, because Thaqib's not here, and
Yeah, so it's quite nice. This totalitarian regime has collapsed, and we are now a free state.
exactly
3 people.
But what's quite ironic to actually introduce this podcast theme or episode. Unfortunately, the American is not here to discuss about what we're about to discuss, which is
Our dear friend, sitting in the Oval Office, and his comments.
The orange man.
Yes, the orange man.
the orange. Oh wow, yes, of course. So many of you guys must have heard the whole spat between Donald Trump, his tweets, and him targeting 4 congresswomen, 2 of which are Muslims, one of Palestinian background and one of Somali background. And some of his comments of the fact that these people don't like America, these guys don't love our country, and they should all go back. So does go back mean go back to the hospital?
So when his tweets, he's mentioned home, the word home, go back home, whatever, etc., etc., etc. Now, bearing in mind these are congresswomen, so they're representing the country. They're not just normal citizens. So they've taken the extra step to go out and run for office, etc. So they take the United States of America as their home. But the issue here is whether or not it's objectively their home. If the president of the country or the president of the administration they're under is saying that somewhere else is their home, then in reality, where is their home? So this is the discussion we're going to have. And we need to bring the wider discussion of whether or not first-gen, second-gen immigrant families, Muslims, even non-Muslims who are immigrants to Western countries, actually do belong here, or whether they feel a sense of belonging or not, genuine belonging. And
It comes to the question where I think when people are always kind of said in racist remarks, go back home, people always give sarcastic reply of, oh, where should I go? Hospital. And then that's people who do genuinely feel attached to the country of their birth, which is, as in for a lot of second-gen or third-gen Muslims who do feel like the West is their home, and they do believe that their kind of point of, or their area of impact is the West. So
I've always seen the case that those people who use the argument go home because they don't have any arguments left. So it just seems to be a cop-out kind of thing. Like, you know what, I can't deal with you. You're actually making good points and I don't have anything to come back with. So you know what, you just go home. So I think what seems to be the case is that these 4 women that you said, congresswomen, they're obviously giving him a hard time.
Mhm.
And he's failing to actually deal with it. And so I think it was where he's now starting to lash out and his true colours are basically coming through.
Does that mean that we're reading the racism into it then?
No,
If
no,
Jen-
no,
if-
he's
if-
racist.
Is he racist?
Obviously.
If you say
So
that,
here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Trump's been saying he doesn't even have racism bone in his body. You have some close allies of his who've said, Donald Trump's not a racist. But in Congress, in the House of Representatives, they have actually put forward a resolution which has been passed that this tweet of his is now officially condemned as being racist. So the so America officially recognizes.
well, I'm sure they tried to. Ilhan tried to put impeachment motions
It
forward.
wasn't Ilhan.
I'm sure it was
Was it
Ilhan.
Ilhan?
They tried to impeach him.
But
They said that this is the stage in which we need to seriously consider the debate of impeaching the president, and that was shut down.
So immediately after that resolution was passed, there was a resolution to impeachment, which was shut down by even Democrats.
That was the majority of the House that was shut down.
Majority of the House of Representatives, which is the Democrats. But the question is, so the 4 congresswomen that were targeted, two are black, one Arab background, and one Hispanic.
Yeah.
And I think, as you mentioned, Jahangir, it's like the kind of conversation where these people are kind of outlining the flaws within Donald Trump's policies and his agendas, and how Islamophobic they can be, or how racist they can be, and how unfairly targeting they can be, especially in recent light of even the census. There was a bit of a hoo-ha over there as well, just because of Trump was initially going to include the question within the census of are you an American citizen, which can be seen as very, aggressive, well, not aggressive, but even very intimidating to migrants. And it's over these kind of comments where eventually Trump's like, okay, I've had enough. You guys don't love our country. The usual. These guys don't love our country. These guys can go back.
That's a very nice impression, huh?
Thank you. My impression's actually one of my favorite features. Like, I can do a Yorkshire accent.
No, please don't try that again. I think the question we need to be asking is the definition of home. So, even though we're not like Qadi said, we don't need to read a lot into it. It's just a lash out by the president because he can't do anything else intellectually. But I think in terms of what's been brought about by the comments, it's an issue of whether people actually do feel at home here. And although a lot of people do, so when someone says to you, go back home, and you say, I was born in the hospital, blah, 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 a lot of people do take it to heart and they think, am I really home? Because if I was home, then I wouldn't be being subjected to this abuse every day. A home should be a safe place for a person. A home should be a place where a person can rest and enjoy themselves without any fear of, being rebuked by some random person you don't even know. So these are the questions that we're bringing up.
So is a home a place where you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Or is a home a place where others make you feel comfortable? Which is what I'm trying to say.
Repeat that again, please.
Do you feel comfortable?
He wasn't listening.
I was
Of course he
listening.
wasn't listening. He was on his phone.
I want to ponder.
But yeah, sorry, the vibration was Asad's phone.
That wasn't. If it was my phone, you would have heard it very loud because my phone was on the table. It was your phone on the chair.
Damn it.
All right, anyway. So, is a home where you personally feel comfortable, or is it a place where people make you feel comfortable?
I think, no, it's a place where you feel comfortable, but then your comfort also depends on actions of others. So if they don't make you feel comfortable, then you're not comfortable.
But this is why where I disagree. Like, albeit, yes, a home is supposed to be a place of tranquility and maskana, and it's supposed to be a place where you're supposed to be feeling comfortable. Let's go back to even the example of Rasulullah. His home was Mecca, and he made that very clear. His hometown, and his love for Mecca was always there. But the fact is, he was never safe in Mecca. He never felt welcomed post prophethood in Mecca, and even after Fath Mecca, he still kind of went back to Medina and made that his new home. Okay, yes, I just realized.
So the point you just made,
no,
you're not welcome at home, so move and make a new home.
He's got a point because when the Prophet ﷺ, when he left Mecca, I mean, there are narrations which suggest that he went to the Kaaba and he said, and he expresses that, I don't want to leave. I'm being forced to leave. If he had the choice, he would have stayed. And in fact, even at the end when Fatah of Mecca happens, the Prophet ﷺ goes back to Medina out of his love for the Ansar. In fact, the Ansar have this thing where they think, you know what, the Prophet ﷺ might stay. But the Prophet ﷺ has that, because at the end of the day, the Ansar welcomed the Prophet ﷺ and the rest of the companions and gave them a place when they didn't have anywhere to go. So, I mean, it's a difficult one. But you can have a deep attachment to a place even if everyone there doesn't like you. It is possible.
To the physical place, yes. So if you have sentiments towards the physical place, then yes. So the Prophet ﷺ, his sentiments were towards the physical place of Mecca.
No,
it wasn't towards the people necessarily, but it was towards the physical place. Am I right or wrong?
No, but
the place of sanctity before Prophet ﷺ he was even born, you know, and the sanctity was passed on through prophethood, you know. Innately, when he was a child, his breast was opened up and through an angel. So this sanctity of the city, or of himself as a prophet, it links back to the other prophets. And that's the reason that Mecca it had a sentimental value to the Prophet ﷺ, and a religious one as well. But the people necessarily in Mecca, they were all the Quraysh, they were enemies of Islam.
Of course, but the thing is that's the point I'm trying to make, where even when you look at your own home, by the way, it's not always all happy and all tranquil. You have arguments at home. You have, you know, fights, whether it be physical, whether it be verbal. You have difficult moments where you're kind of separated away from everyone in your own room, and you seclude yourself, especially when you're young and when you're a teenager. But that doesn't mean that it's not your home. So
yeah, but we have to make a distinction between arguments and fights that happen on a one-off basis, or rarely, or not like continuously, and a culture of arguments and fights, a culture of abuse. Now, the difference between them is one is ingrained within society and the other is not. The other is dependent upon the individual as well. Now, we live in a society where, of course, everything's dependent upon the individual, but we live in a society where, not to say that we live in a society, but we live in a society where we're constantly fed Islamophobic publications, Islamophobic narratives in the media, you know, government, on the streets, in publications, on TV.
Sorry. What you're saying basically is that a home is a place where you're accepted.
Not necessarily, no. Because like we said again, Prophet was accepted, and we accept that his home was Mecca.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying the home needs to be I'm not necessarily choosing a side. I'm saying it brings up the question for some people whether or not a place can be home where they don't feel accepted. Now, we have to understand that we can take lessons from the Prophet's life, but we can't necessarily start pushing these lessons onto other people's lives and saying, you have to think like this. Otherwise, you're not a good human. Because at the end of the day, if someone lives somewhere, and the sunnah is to, if you want to say the sunnah was the Prophet stayed, the Prophet would have stayed in Mecca if it wasn't for him being driven out by the people. We have situations in the world right now, not even in the West, we have situations where people are being driven out of their towns, and they have no feelings towards the town after that.
Two questions. Now, as you mentioned very rightly, that we shouldn't kind of be imposing these necessarily similar lessons, and it's a very personal question with regards to about home, and I still think it's up to a person to answer that question about where he feels home, whether it be here, whether it be America, or if someone's an ethnic economic migrant or a political migrant, is home where they were born or where the grandparents were born. Now, so question number one here is so let's just use the example of all of us of Pakistani background. Do you feel more at home here in the UK, or do you feel more at home in Pakistan? So yeah, I'll ask that question first and ask the second question after.
I mean, personally, obviously, I feel more at home here. I mean, because out of 27 years, the maximum time I've spent...
You're 27 years old?
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No. You look...
I look older.
You look old.
Yeah, basically.
I look wiser, yeah?
Exactly.
See, for me, okay, let's say out of 27 years, the time I've spent in Pakistan is probably less than 2 years in totality. So, I mean... there's no element of me that can say that I feel more at home when I'm in Pakistan.
So
than
is
I'm
it,
here.
is it being home dependent on time? So I
It
know
is,
people.
I
'cause
think there's a strong link
so
there
I was
as well
in
with
the-
time as well.
I remember now I was in Westminster, in London, and I got in an Uber, and
Ooh,
the Uber
mashallah,
driver
Westminster.
was. Yeah, I was in.
From Rochdale, man, we're talking.
I was in.
So was that the first time you entered
Yeah, it was
civilization?
The big city, very nice, big building. So I got in a Uber, and when I got in the Uber, it was he was an Indian, not a Bengali taxi driver, but he was a Hindu. So I was speaking to him for a bit, and the conversation of home came up.
Yeah.
And the conversation of home, when it came up, it was about the cricket, because the Cricket World Cup was on recently in the UK. And
Big up England. Our country's won. Our country won.
So this is the point I was making. And he said, yeah. I said, what team did you support? He goes, oh, of course, Bangladesh. I said, yeah, fantastic. And for a joke, I said to him, I support England. And he goes to me, so what are you? And I go, I'm Pakistani. And he goes, no, that's not right. You should never do that. You should support Pakistan. It's your team. I said, how is it my team? He goes, where are your parents from? I said, Pakistan. He goes, that is your home then. So, if you pull that out of that scenario there, and we place it in like Cheetham Hill or Rochdale, we have same situations like that. If you ask somebody where you're from,
Yeah.
if you ask somebody where you're from, most of the time they're going to say where they're from in Pakistan. In general, unless it's a professional environment with asking you where you're from, most of the time they'll tell you, I'm from here in Pakistan, from there.
So here's the thing, like there has been a change of shifting, maybe in culture and maybe even identity. So a lot of people nowadays, or maybe this is just in London with there is civilization, but that question, especially
we're just apes down here.
especially when traveling abroad, when people ask where are you from, even myself. So I'll straight up say the UK. And I think, for example, one of the main reasons why is because, first and foremost, I am from the UK. I was born there. I was raised there. My mum was born there. She was raised there as well. Of course, I was born in London. I was born in Hammersmith.
Raised there or here? Why do you keep saying there for? Manchester's in the UK, by the way.
I'm not in Scotland.
Oh, that's nice.
But yeah, anywho. Yeah, so whenever I'm asked this question and I say I'm from the UK, a lot of people are like, you're British, but you're not white. That doesn't make sense.
Where you're from?
Exactly. And the thing is, I think we've come at a stage, especially within Britain, where we're so multicultural, where being British is no longer just about being white. The average British person. I remember watching a video, I think this was in the American elections. There was a video of John Cena where he was kind of talking about American diversity. And he was mentioning, like, imagine he starts off the video by saying, imagine your typical American. And straight away goes, I bet you thought of a man, right? Well, did you know that majority of people in America are women? So mistake number one is that you pictured a man. The average American person would be a woman. And secondly, only like 60 to 70% of people are, for example, are white, which means they're not going to be as white as you think. And he's talking about diversity from a very American point of view. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get to over here, that we've changed the meaning of being British. It no longer means being a white person. Being British means you can be the British ambassador to Singapore, to Indonesia, that whole region is a brown person of Pakistani background, as in Pakistani parents who are migrated. He himself is British, of course, 1,000,000%. But yeah.
But even then, I think, so we're talking about this whole concept of multiculturalism and et cetera, et cetera. So we have the ex-Prime Minister, David Cameron, in a summit somewhere in Europe, some fancy place in a hotel somewhere, I don't know, saying that multiculturalism is dead. So if the Prime Minister is saying that, during his tenure as Prime Minister, saying that multiculturalism is dead, it's quite frightening, especially for the point you're making here about a brown...
That was the ex-Prime Minister, and when you look at the current London Mayor, he's brown.
Okay, does he run the country? Is London the country? So he's gone from Prime Minister to London Mayor.
Listen,
no, the point I was trying to make is...
But yeah, I understand.
So the multiculturalism is dead. Okay, let's take that point on its face value. He thought he had a point, because the point he was trying to make was Britishness is independent on having a British citizenship. And it was evident in the fact that during his time as Prime Minister, he tried very, very hard in educating immigrants in
The
terms
country.
of the country, the massive immigration wave in the country to learn English and to learn basic numeracy, and he failed very miserably. There was when this was going on, there were reports going into the streets of things like Blackburn and Burnley, and they were holding a mic to a lady, even in East London. So your perfect London is not perfect after all. He's holding a mic to a lady, and
Whitechapel, no?
he's asking her.
Most probably.
He's asking her a question, and it's not it's not a difficult question. It's a personal question. He's asking her, and she doesn't understand English.
Yeah. A friend of mine, his grandmother, she's been in the country for about more than 60 years, doesn't speak a word of English. But
Well, that's the same with my grandmother as well. But I think it's this whole issue of integration, etc. Does that feed into the issue of whether this is home or not? Because if we truly regarded this as our home, then we'd learn the language, we'd learn the culture, we'd integrate in terms of integration. What do you mean like that?
Yeah.
But that's another question as well.
I don't get
Does-
that point. I mean, like,
does language dictate whether you're British or not?
okay, like let's take for example Pakistan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love how you said that.
There's 100 of languages spoken just in Pakistan. Okay, so there's many people in Pakistan who don't share languages.
yeah,
Now, are we going to say, okay, now because you guys don't speak the language, whatever that means, therefore
Urdu.
now, which is actually really interesting how that's actually a minority,
it is.
okay,
What?
of people that actually speak Urdu in Pakistan.
Urdu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like upper class language, isn't it? You have to
Exactly.
force it on
So
people.
it's not,
Can I just say it's the only language I speak?
it's the only
no,
language
I
you
thought you
speak.
spoke
Speak
Bengali.
English as well.
No. As in the only Pakistani language.
The only Pakistani language.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't understand a single word of.
What's a Pakistani language?
Urdu.
That's nice.
Anywho, you were making a serious point. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
for cutting you off.
so like, if you take countries that have pockets and groups of people who speak different languages and they're still able to make a nation, I don't see why it's that much of a
Because
problem
most of
here.
these countries, the language differences are they're ethnic, innit? So, but in the UK, they're based on immigration. So most of the time,
It's still ethnic though, isn't it?
not as
Ethnicity, isn't it?
well, not as big as a divide as not as a. It's a bigger divide than if you go back to Pakistan. The only reason they speak different languages is because there was a forced migration. That's why, and you can't really. There was a forced migration, and that's how Pakistan was formed. And people from different parts of India, they went to certain parts in Pakistan, and then their communities were built there. So the Sindhi people of South India went to Sindh, and the Punjabi people from North India went to the Punjab, and then you got the Afghanis coming across the border from there when the border was open. So the country was formed. There was a bit of turmoil, so we said the border open, let's come in there, and then you got the Irani border,
No, no.
Pakistanis, etc.
The point that I'm trying to make is that there are many countries in the world where its people speak many different languages.
Now, I'm just saying here, just for as
I
a note,
I get your
as a
point.
no-
No, no.
as a note,
Yeah.
I'm saying that this is not my position. I'm just saying, I'm just
your
making
position,
devil's
huh?
advocate here. I'm just saying people will think like this. So people
Thing
didn't
is,
go to Pakistan.
I actu-
People don't speak different languages in Pakistan because of
multiculturalism.
yeah, just purely because that's how they were taught. In the UK, most people they came as economic migrants. They came to make a living and they sent money back home and they came to benefit from the country. That's what people. These are the arguments people want to make, and we need to answer these questions.
Thing
If
is,
somebody comes here to benefit, why can't they learn the language? Simple.
it comes into like the second question which I was going to ask. Just before I ask it, by the way, regarding your encounter with the taxi driver, like it's the typical kind of question where
Encounter.
the-
That sounds so dangerous. Encounter. Anyway,
encounter.
Okay,
Is
wait.
that not the word you guys use? Sorry,
we don't speak English up here, no.
You see, this is the first
Speak
time.
Urdu.
Today was the first of a time. I think it's a very iconic moment for me. First time I heard of the word tardy being used in a sentence.
Tardy. I said so. Qadi was running a bit late for the recording, and I said, "Oh, the tardiness of Qadi, etc., etc." And he
I
goes,
thought you
"What?"
said. I thought you said TARDIS.
He goes, "TARDIS." What do you said? TARDIS.
I thought you said TARDIS at the beginning.
TARDIS.
Yeah, as in time and relative dimension in space.
Is that what it means? Okay, that's nice.
You've never watched Doctor
I
Who?
think David Cameron was talking about YouTube and he was talking about the English thing. You know.
But sorry, your encounter with the Uber driver, I think it's very unfair. It's a typical kind of question where, I mean, if you remember the comedy show, Come Fly With Me.
I love that show.
Yeah, you remember
Yeah,
Taj,
I've not seen it.
I know Taj.
Taj Banzor?
A volcano has erupted over Bradford. You said that. This is hilarious. This is hilarious. Yeah, go
Okay,
carry on with you.
So, if you remember the chief immigration officer, Sir Ian
Yeah.
Foote, by the way, these are all fictional characters before an actual guy called Ian Foote gets mobbed
Yeah.
by some Muslims.
So you're going to bring up his interview with Taj?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I mean, he's trying to say that, if there was a cricket match between India and Pakistan and England, who would you support? And he just says, quite frankly, I don't watch cricket. Okay, what do you watch?
Cage fighting.
Cage fighting. And then, okay, if there's a fight between a Pakistani and an Englishman, who would you support? But that point is that I still don't. I think that you can't use that. It's a sports. It's a sports game. There's so many other factors into kind of judging. You can't use that as a judgment of where you kind of belong and who you should support, because there's many other factors other than where you feel at home. It's also about, for example, which team's more talented. And
Well, it's not though, because
Which team
before-
actually plays good cricket?
before the
Exactly.
World Cup, even though England weren't highly ranked in the ICC rankings, we have players from New Zealand. So Ben Stokes, he's born in New Zealand. He only moved here because his dad became a rugby coach in the UK.
Yeah.
We've got Owen Morgan, Ireland. Okay, that's not very talented. Another
No,
example,
no.
Jason Roy, South Africa.
And historically speaking, and I think this is why England do well in cricket, and this is what they should actually adopt from in football, is that they actually make use of the multiculturalism there is within the UK, i.e. they snap up all the migrants. So in cricket, for example, we've also had, what's that South African guy's name again? Sorry, I feel like a granddad right now.
Which South African guy?
Back in the days, he's retired now. He used to play around the days of Freddie Flintoff and those.
Jack Callis.
No. Come on, man. South African.
Okay, you just can't say this is plenty.
He's
of South
English.
African.
He's English. Sorry, he's South African, but he plays for England. Or he played for England.
Oh yes.
No.
He's gone
Vaughan.
out of my head
No,
now.
not Vaughan. Not Vaughan.
I was thinking.
People are thinking now, what the hell's wrong with these guys? They can't even get his name
Anywho, the
right.
point was...
Yeah, he played for England, yes.
Exactly, and it just kind of goes to show about, multiculturalism is for the win. But anywho, going to the question which I was going to ask initially, because we started talking about languages.
I need to find this guy's name now.
I know.
It's just really stuck in my head.
Peterson.
I know the guy.
Kevin
Yes,
Peterson.
KP.
KP.
There
man,
we
that's the
go,
one.
KP.
Give this man a medal.
Give KP a medal. The guy's a national hero. Okay, I don't know if he is or not, but anywho, going back to the question I was going to ask is, because we started talking about languages and we started talking about Cameron's policy in integrating migrants and the issue of integration. The question is, why are we actually asking the question of where is home? Why is that relevant?
You looking at me?
I'm looking at both of you. Why is that
Um,
question relevant for?
Why is it relevant?
I think as a Muslim, we need to be asking the question of whether we can fully be able to protect our identity as Muslims in the country for a very long time. We need to preserve the generations to come, and the generations to come, and the integrity, the religious integrity of the generations to come.
But you don't have to be at home to actually do
I think
that.
we do. I
Understand?
think we do.
Now, see, if we take the philosophy that we're travelers anyway,
Yeah.
irrespective of where we are on this earth, and true home is Jannah, then all of this becomes a moot point.
Well, then
It's a reason why. It's a reason why I play Qasr everywhere I go.
I think even then. So you're thinking about the
So-
whole point of being a traveler, etc. I don't think that exclusively applies
thing
to
is
the
that-
idea of having a community. I think that applies to more on a personal level, esoteric level. Yeah, you could think.
Yeah.
But on
Thing
terms,
Sorry. Here's the thing. I remember one of my teachers in Egypt, he goes to me, the people in the UK, do they really accept you, as you are? Be honest. I said, possibly not. No. He goes, okay. When you go back to Pakistan, do they accept you as a Pakistani? I go, no. He goes, see? You're in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
Literally in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere. And that does seem to be a case with some of us. Okay? That we do have that feeling that, okay, maybe there are those in this country that have not really accepted us. And when we go back, quote unquote, home, they see us exactly in the same way.
Mm.
That they just look at these guys have come, they're going to go. Because this is not their home, that's their home. And so I think
I'm not sure they'll try and milk you for every single penny you have.
So I think what it comes down to is where we feel comfortable. and irrespective of what anyone thinks, to be honest.
So the reason why I asked this question is because, kind of expanding on Asad's answer about protecting the Muslim identity, it's not just about that. I think it's more about the reason why the question is relevant about, where is home, is because essentially speaking, your life purpose. When you look at, for example, the idea of Islam and the purpose of Islam, when you think about Rasulullah's objective of saving us from the fire, and the ayah in the Quran about qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, that you first start on yourself and then your family. This is where it's most important, I think, because I feel like by answering the question of where is home, you understand. We as Muslims, we kind of have an understanding of what our purpose is, in terms of, yes, we understand that we're here because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us. We're here as trying to earn our place in Jannah, but also because on a very kind of communal level and more of a practical level, we're here because we believe that as Muslims we should be doing our part into making sure we're protecting humanity from all sorts of crisis on a very broad level, and that making sure that we strive to implement justice and to make sure that we get rid of all evils as best to the best of our ability, whether it be poverty, whether it be sorry, Asad, I'm saying this, communism.
No,
Can I say communism is not evil? It was just to trigger us.
Yeah, exactly.
But so going to that point here, so as a result of that, you've kind of identified about what is your why? Why are we existing? And by answering the question of where is home, you kind of think about, okay, how am I now going to actually practically implement it? How am I actually going to actually practically work towards?
But how does the question of home answer that?
Because when you've identified your home,
it can answer where, but it can't answer how.
No, you see, for me, I think the believer has to be dynamic.
No, exactly.
Okay? See, so he will adjust to his context and his situation.
Exactly.
So the principle of khayrun nas man yanfa'un nas, the best of people are those who benefit mankind, irrespective of where he is, he has to do that duty.
No, exactly. So this is my point. So how where this is answered of where is your area of impact, as a result of knowing where your area of impact is, you can now actually think about how I'm actually going to go on about doing it. What is the kind of how is the justice system in my country? How is the legal system in my country? How is the social economic background of my country, for example? And then you can start actually thinking of planning ways of actually doing it. If, for example, now you've realized that, okay, this is not possible anymore, where now using the example of how Asad said about protecting identity, now it's become to a point where in this certain country, country X, it's become almost impossible to protect my Muslim identity. As you mentioned, you have to be dynamic now. And this is the example of Rasulullah, where it came to a point in Mecca, the Muslim identity could no longer be strong there, and you can no longer be a freely practicing Muslim. As a result, home changed from Mecca to Medina.
Yeah, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna ardullahi wasi'atan fatuhajiru fiha. The earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is vast. At the end of the day, every single piece of land and everything in this cosmos, it belongs to Allah.
Mm-hmm.
So if it gets to a stage where we feel, or where anyone feels that they can't do their duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way for him, inshallah.
So I think we've answered the question of where is home.
Right?
I don't think we have, because
that's the end of the podcast then, isn't it?
I don't think we have, because at the end of it, so you just said about, you're talking about this dynamic approach, etc., and Mari's talking about how we should be looking at towards benefiting the community, etc., etc. And the best of man is the one who benefits. And I think we really need to look at the issue from a communal perspective more than an individual perspective. So we could talk about individualism, and that's fine. But when we're talking about issues, so you said just like 5 minutes ago, you said if there's a chance somebody's religious identity is going to be erased, can they move? If there is a chance, it's happening right in front of us. It's happening in Myanmar. It's happening in Sri Lanka.
No, exactly.
It's happening in Palestine. It's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And Oh, Palestine's a bit different.
No,
Uh,
the
no,
Palestinian identity is being crushed, is being destroyed. And the identity of the Palestinians is duly linked with the Islamic identity as well.
No, if not, that I agree with, and that's the whole point that I'm trying to say. That if okay, I know it's going to be very hard for me to actually say this because I could never ever empathize with these kind of people who are going through these sufferings, whether it be the Uyghur Muslims or the Muslims in Myanmar. But it comes to a point where, for example, I've realized that me being a Muslim itself is now becoming a threat, and it's completely impossible for me to therefore kind of go on about achieving my objectives. Then yes, I have to move away because this is no longer my home now. Because I can't impact these people. I can't. I've tried it with these people. These people have rejected me, and that's it. I have to kind of move on.
But even then, thinking about yourself. So at the end of the day, we have people, like I said, a cough across the world.
No, you're right.
Who are dying, and the identity is being wiped clear. Like it was never there. And then we have problems here in the UK as well, on the community level as well. But when do we decide that the people over there, their problem? When do we decide when their problem becomes our problem? And that's the question. When is this?
No, so their problem is our problem.
No, but in terms of affecting our day-to-day lives, so we have community issues on determining whether the UK is our home or not. But in terms of whether our efforts in the UK can benefit them, so lobbying, stuff like that, etc.,
Yeah.
political processes can benefit them. And when we meet a dead end, when do we decide where and when the next step is?
You had to complicate this even further.
Because it needs to be complicated, isn't it?
You know, there was a very wise saying from I can't remember who this was.
Jahangir.
Yes, I think it was.
Basically, intelligence is the simplification of complicated matters, not the complication of simple matters. I'm not saying what you said was simple and you're complicating things, but I'm just saying.
That was definitely me, though. Yeah.
But no, to open up another kind of worms. You know what? I was looking forward to actually ending this podcast when I said, I think Jahangir's answered the question of where is home, and the answer to that is the Earth. And I was going to end it on
where else are we going to go? Mars, the Earth, of course, is the Earth.
Well, there's some planets.
Exactly. As in, the point is, it's our home isn't restricted to borders. It's the whole entire.
Well, there you go again. So it isn't restricted to borders. Since the creation of the nation state, visas, etc., etc.
And what I was going to say after that was, the French have a beautiful definition of
Home.
Not home.
What, North Africa?
Of races. They believe that apparently by definition, or I don't know if it's according to the constitution or what is. It was a Frenchman who once told me this. The definition of there is only one race basically in existence to the French, and that is the human race.
That is not true at all.
Of course, by practice, it's not true to the French, which is why it's ironic. It's very, very ironic. But it was going to be a beautiful ending to say there is only one race. There is no such thing as. Being from a certain
even if you want to think that, it's not helpful, because Allah says in the Quran, we've made you different nations and tribes and colors, so you get to know each other.
Yeah, of course.
If we're all the same and we're all this human race,
we're all same but different at the same time.
Allah Akbar. See, you said,
so for example,
a minute ago you just said the intelligent one is the person who can make complicated matters simple, and you just made it even more complicated.
You know what, I was going to end off by saying I am British, but I'm also wherever my ummah is. I am from Myanmar. I am Pakistani. I am Palestinian. I am American. I am Bosnian. I am wherever any Muslim has
there are Muslims in every single country in the world. So you're everything. You are the world. It's a bit egotistical. Just call yourself the world.
No, and we all are, basically. Have I gone a bit cheesy?
No, it's not cheesy. It's a bit...
You see, it was a nice thing to end on, but...
It's very conceptual.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have any... what's the benefit of you saying you're the world?
He wants to go to all of these countries, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he travels to them already.
Does he?
Oh, yeah.
Not all of them.
On the taxpayers' money, yeah.
On taxpayers' money.
I'm taking taxpayers' jobs right now.
Can I just say,
his BMW, by the way, so we're outside and we're bringing the equipment inside, and he's touched the handle with his finger, and the windows just come up. Like it's got a fingerprint sensor on the car or something.
Well, it's not a fingerprint, it's just a keyless entry.
I wouldn't know, because I drive a car with a key that you put in everywhere.
Okay, a million times I have to say this. Okay, first and foremost, alhamdulillah, I do work. I don't live off JSA. Basically, there's a thing. Okay, we've got a guest host over here. He's a bit unaware of the private jokes. So please be welcoming Asad to the guest host. Qari Saab, basically what is going on is that apparently
he's being exposed. That's what's going on.
Oh wow.
Exposed. but basically, going back to the point on this conceptual thingamajig that Abdul Sami made up, it can benefit us in certain ways to think like that. Of course it can. It can help to eliminate racism in ideologies, but in terms of tangible benefits in the system that we live in, it doesn't really work that much.
Or does it?
You tell me.
See, I think that because not all of us actually think like this, we kind of limit our area of impact in terms of who, what we're doing out there. A lot of people might not even be thinking about kind of the greater cause or the bigger picture of a humanity that's much more living in a better world. Most people are just, as you mentioned, especially coming from Asian backgrounds, when they came here to the UK as economic migrants, was just to kind of live a better life where we're not going through poverty on an individual level. And maybe that's part of the problem. And part of that is to do with awareness. And the more people are aware of each other's conditions. An example being, so with FEMISO, which is the Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organizations, last year the General Assembly happened. It's like an umbrella organization basically for all young Muslim and student organizations across Europe, both in the EU and outside of EU, just making it very clear before that question pops up. So for example, they had the General Assembly last year in Bosnia, and because they were in Bosnia, they thought, okay, why not just do a trip to Srebrenica as well? And then this year, for example, for the Remembering Srebrenica Day, a lot of the affiliates of this organization, so even like FOSIS or the French organizations or the Italian organizations, they all kind of commemorated and kind of shared a post about Srebrenica and raised awareness about the disaster and the genocide that happened in Srebrenica, which, by the way, we have to cover very soon as a separate episode. But you see, that kind of change in mentality and that kind of level of awareness has helped. And I think as long as we kind of carry on educating people about having this kind of way of thinking,
it's helped to educate people, but it hasn't helped. Unless you politicize an issue, I believe unless you politicize an issue, you're not going to change a lot in a system that's inherently political.
All right. So how do you get to this discussion? I'm a bit confused.
So in summary, we started talking about Donald Trump a long time ago.
A long time ago.
And Trump said basically these guys should go back home. And it was for congresswomen, and we talked a bit about some of their kind of causes in a way. And then from there we kind of talked about, okay, what is home then? And from there we concluded that home is everywhere, because we first said that home is very kind of individualistic in terms of it's more personal. A person can kind of only define his own or her own home. And then from there we asked the question about why is it relevant to find out where home is. And then we then kind of talked about it's about area of impact, for example, and the whole thing about integration and contributing to society. And then from there we came here, I think.
Sounds good. Alhamdulillah.
So there's a point on home. So Shakespeare, in one of his plays, King Lear. In the play, you have a king who divides his kingdom between his three daughters. And when he divides his kingdom, he assumes that when he divides his kingdom, he'll be able to retire from his duties, not fully, and live with his daughters. So he goes to his first daughter's house, and then she kicks up a fuss, and he kicks him out. And then he kicks up a fuss, oh, I've disinherited you, blah, 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 blah. Then he goes to his second daughter's house to find a home. And she does the same, and they conspire against him. And then there's a scene in the play where Shakespeare writes that he goes into the storm. He walks out of the house and he walks into the storm, and he starts confronting God. He starts speaking to God, speaking about how he is more sinned against than sinned, and how he's been forsaken by his own family. And then there's a kind of like a resolution towards the end of the play where he starts realizing that the world is his home. So like Abdul Sami said, I think this is key. So this is one of the amazing things about Shakespeare. He makes everything relevant. It doesn't matter what time you live in. It's relevant still to us now. that King Lear, the madman, after being denied from both of his daughters' homes, he found a place in the world which wasn't a physical place. It wasn't a place where you can open the door and close the door. It was a state of mind that King Lear found, and he maintained it throughout the play until his death at the end. And I think it's important for Muslims to note this as well, that even though we may be rejected from homes and we may be thrown out by our own family, perhaps, we need to have a state of mind where we understand that this world is our home and Allah has gifted this world to us. And if we understand that, just as King Lear did, then I think we'll be content with our lives.
That is a beautiful way to end, actually.
Inshallah.
And to end it.
Oh, wow. All pressures on me again. But yeah, you know what? It's been a very interesting discussion. And I think, in one way, Asad, you answered your own question a couple of episodes back about where is home. And yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you forgot about that, didn't you?
Oh.
So yeah, Jazakumullah khair everyone for listening and watching, if you're watching. I don't think you're watching because there's no way of watching us because there are no cameras. But yeah, as always, if there's any feedback, any comments, you can always kind of email us at, what is our email?
middlewest@gmail.co.uk. middlewestpc@gmail.co.uk.
gmail.com.
Is it .com?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we'll post the links.
Yeah.
You can follow us and listen to us on most podcasting platforms.
Listen to us on Spotify, on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, on YouTube,
Google.
on Google's Android's version of iTunes, because I don't know what that is.
Android, Google Play. It's called Google Play, isn't it?
Google Podcast. Yeah.
Google Podcast.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
on that.
Listen to us there, and if there's any pointers you want to leave behind,
or if you have any suggestions for episode guests or subjects, then you can just pop them in.
Exactly. We are a democracy, a proper democracy.
Of course. Now the dictator is gone.
Exactly.
So
جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.